Marcy. I'm also a three-timer here, my third Tarrytown meeting, and I'm very excited to be a part of it again and to interact with many, many of you and see where this will take us. I think this is a really exciting moment now where we have a chance to form the future effort, collaborative effort in biopolitics. So, like Marcy, to tell my biopolitical story, I would have to go back to the 1960s, because I also grew up then. I grew up in Hyde Park in Chicago, now famous as Barack Obama's hometown. But in the 1960s, Hyde Park was an integrated neighborhood that was committed as a community to the civil rights struggle and the anti-war movement. I would say maybe it was just the people my parents associated with, but I think of my elementary school, you know, our teachers had us going to anti-war rallies and civil rights support groups. And so from a very, very young girl, I felt it was my obligation to be involved in social justice movements. And I also felt that it was possible to change the world. I think if anything comes out of my experience in the 1960s, it was a belief that people could change the world for the better. And that's a belief that I carry with me to this day. And then also, another important part of my childhood was, I know this can't be right. Okay, sorry. We've got a timer here, and it says I only have 49 seconds left, so I figure I better move a few decades in advance. So I'm going to go back to my childhood then. I dedicated my book, Fatal Invention, to my parents, Iris and Robert Roberts, who taught me that there is only one human race. And I also, in telling my story, would have to give tribute to my parents because they deliberately and consciously taught me and my sisters that there is a common humanity, that all people are equally valuable. They made sure that we traveled around the world and impressed on us that all human beings are equal and there is no such thing as natural racial divisions. My mother was a black immigrant from Jamaica, and my father was a white Chicago native, an anthropologist who studied interracial and cross-cultural marriages around the world. So my whole childhood was raised thinking about the possibility, seeing the possibility that people could get together in very intimate ways from very different backgrounds. And they were very idealistic. I actually don't share their particular idealism because they focused, I think, too much on the power of personal relationships as opposed to political change. But that lesson that they taught me when I was little is very important to this day. Also, I think that I thought about biopolitics when I was very, very young. By the time I was 10 years old, I had thought very deliberately about my racial identity, and I had rejected the idea that I was mixed race or some combination of biological races, and had made the decision that I would identify as a black person for political reasons. And I can think back to by the time I was in 6th grade, because I can remember a presentation I gave in 8th grade on the book Black Power, where I had already, made that decision. So I was thinking about biopolitics, I think, from very young because of my background. And and knew that race was not a natural division among human beings, but also knew that it was a very real political system that had real consequences for people. Okay, now I'm going to fast forward a couple decades to when I was an attorney at a big law firm. Lots of parallels with John's story, but I'll skip over majoring in anthropology in college and then deciding to go to law school. But in the late 1980s, one of my, another associate, a friend of mine at the firm, brought me a decision in a case called In Re AC and said, you've got to read this, you're not going to believe what happened. And it was a decision by a DC judge who approved the forced cesarean section of a pregnant woman who was dying from lung cancer and against her will. And I saw it as a judge approving the mutilation of a woman just because she was pregnant. That's how I viewed it. I was totally shocked by this decision, and I think of it as what propelled me to leave the firm. I had been thinking about teaching, but I wanted to get involved in the reproductive justice movement after reading that decision. Now, when I started teaching and doing research, I turned immediately to the prosecutions of women who, for using drugs during pregnancy that were going on at the time. And I suspected that they were probably mostly against poor black women. And with the help of an ACLU memo and calling attorneys, discovered that that was the case. And that, I think, my alarm at those prosecutions, and also the fact that people weren't identifying them as racist prosecutions, was what sent me on a path of research and advocacy in the area of biopolitics. So I wrote my first book, Killing the Black Body, Race, Reproduction, and the Meaning of Liberty, about the intersection of reproductive rights and racism, and the way in which racial and sex and class oppression all come together to determine reproductive health policy, or shape anyway, reproductive health policy, and the very meaning of reproductive rights in the United States and around the world. It also was clear to me that technology was not necessarily an unadulterated good, because birth control had been used to empower women, but also had been used to oppress whole groups of women through forced sterilization and other kinds of coercive birth control. So it impressed on me very much that you have to have a political view of technologies. You cannot just embrace technology as unerringly being progressive. Technology could be used for good, and it could be used for evil. Now, in working on Killing the Black Body, I was searching for a literature that would help me explain the harm in the prosecutions of women who use drugs during pregnancy, but more broadly, the kinds of control over and devaluation of childbearing by poor black women. And that's when, in looking for that literature, it led me to a deeper reading of the history of eugenics. And I remember reading that, I thought, this is what's going on. This isn't just about a maternal-fetal conflict, which was the main frame that people have been writing to describe these prosecutions. This was about a standard for who deserves to bear children, because I saw these prosecutions as punishing poor black women for having children based on a devaluation of their being mothers in the first place. And so eugenics and the philosophy that certain people are more deserving of having children than others, and that ultimately the philosophy that the social order is inherited and therefore immutable, that basic false premise that there is no use in social change because things are the way they are, as unequal as they are, because of biological difference. That message of eugenics I saw being played out in the prosecutions of poor black women in cities across the country in the 1990s. And this understanding also brought me in touch with people in the disability rights movement, where I again saw a connection between their critique of the medical model of disability and my critique of biological explanations for why most black children are born into poverty. People were saying at the time that it's because, their mothers are having too many children, or their mothers are all drug addicts. This is why we've got high black infant mortality rates in the United States and high rates of black childhood poverty. And so I began to see connections between eugenics, the disability rights movement, the reproductive justice movement, the women's movement, the campaigns against exploitation of women's reproductive labor, against the devaluation of people based on race and based on disability, seemed very much connected to me. And one of the concerns that connected them all was a concern about these false biological explanations for social inequality. And I think that identifying biological explanations for social inequality is something that ties together the work I've been doing over the past 25 years. The way in which those explanations naturalize social inequality and an unjust social order, medicalize social problems, and also justify the most brutal infliction of harm on people and make it seem as if it's good for society. From that case of In Re AC to locking up women who've just given birth to babies in jail for somehow for the good of them and their children, to BIDL, an explanation of high rates of heart failure among young black men as some pathophysiological difference, and then a technological pharmaceutical solution for it. I see that harm in the myth of natural biological divisions among races, natural biological difference between men and women, between people with disabilities and others, between poor people and wealthy people. That biological explanation that justifies then a continued unjust social order and tries to dispel the need for social change. So I still have hope that I had when I was a little girl, that by bringing together multiple social movements that share the same concerns about these myths about biology and social status and social equality, and share common values about our shared humanity. I still believe that bringing these movements together can create a better world where we really recognize and deeply respect our shared humanity. And I'll end there. Thank you.